Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Destination Unknown. So today we picked a case that is really, really exciting because it's one of the most baffling UFO cold cases that was ever recorded in Australia. And the other exciting aspect to it is that it actually happened in Victoria. So we actually did a special investigation and we went out to Moorabbin Airport, which is where Frederick Valentich, who's the pilot that disappeared, the last place that he actually took off from. So
But he didn't actually get lost there.
He didn't get lost there, but that was where the last flight that he ever piloted took off from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we went and actually visited the site, and we got a bunch of footage, which we will share with you guys throughout this video. All right, so I prepared a bit of information like I did last time, so I'll take you through it.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little bit of context and the story behind, what happened. On the night of the 21st of October, 1978, 20-year-old Frederick took off from Victoria's Moorabbin Airport at 6:19 p.m. He was piloting a rented single-engine Cessna 182L over Bass Strait and heading southeastwardly towards King Island.
Is it dark yet at that time?
So by the time he'd radioed in, it was like 20 minutes after sunset. So I'm assuming that there was that mirage of light that happens or that still is in place after sunset. I'm pretty sure those were kind of the conditions.
It's not pitch black.
It's not pitch black. So he was piloting a rented single-engine Cessna 182L over Bass Strait.
Okay.
Heading towards King Island.
That's a very small plane.
It's a very, very small plane. So from your one flying lesson.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us what that's like? Because you actually piloted a Cessna, right? You were in a Cessna for the thing?
I think it might have been a Cessna.
I think it was a Cessna.
Yeah, it was either a Cessna or something.
I think it was a Cessna.
Okay, maybe it was a Cessna. So the experience is it kind of felt like being in an old car, like a very, very old car, and everything, I guess from taking off to being in the air, it kind of felt rattly and old, and the controls are quite loose and you can hear everything. I guess if you never been in a really small plane like that and been kind of flying it, I would be quite intimidated to take that very far distance. Yeah.
In the dark, over water, alone.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite a scary experience especially your very first time. Once you've done it a few times and you're comfortable, then I guess you'd be fine with it. But as a first time in the dark,
it's like a big hurdle. At 7:06 p.m., shortly after sunset, he radioed Melbourne Air Flight Service and spoke with controller Steve Roby. Their exchange started with Frederick asking Steve whether there was any known traffic below 5,000 feet. To which Steve responded, quote, "What type of aircraft is it?" unquote. Frederick responded, quote, "I cannot affirm. It is for bright. It seems to me like landing lights. The aircraft has just passed over me, at least 1,000 feet above," unquote. Then, a few seconds later, quote, "It's approaching right now from due east towards me. It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2-3 times at a time, at speeds I could not identify," unquote. Steve then asked Frederick to confirm that he could not identify the aircraft, to which Frederick responded in the affirmative. He then stated, quote, "It's not an aircraft. As it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify more than that. It has such speed. It is right below me now, Melbourne. It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and sort of metallic, like it's all shiny on the outside," unquote. After 5 seconds of silence, Frederick reported that, quote, "It's just vanished," unquote. He then questioned whether it could have been a military aircraft. Shortly thereafter, Frederick reported that the, quote, "engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is coughing," unquote. and that, quote, the strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. This was then followed by silence for 17 seconds with audible, unidentified staccato noises. The communication ended at 7:12 p.m. The entire exchange lasted only a few minutes. And then that was it. That was the end of the exchange. And then he just fell off the radar. He disappeared. They don't know what happened to him.
Okay.
An intensive air, land, and sea search was carried out until October 25th, but no trace of the Cessna was found. And obviously no trace of Frederick.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to find a plane that went into Bass Strait.
Yeah. So theory number 1. The first theory is that Frederick staged his disappearance. So the reason for this theory is primarily due to the fact that there were like a lot of discrepancies with what he told his family and friends versus what he told like the airport as to the reason behind why he was flying at that time of night over water to King Island.
Yeah.
So he said to his family and friends that he was going to King Island to pick up crayfish, and then he said to Moorabbin Airport that he was going to pick up passengers. But neither of those things were true. So there were no crayfish waiting for him, and there were no passengers waiting for him.
Okay, that's a bit odd.
Yeah, so there's like what was he doing, right? So the second theory posits that Frederick was a victim of a tragic accident of his own making. So this theory is from astronomer and retired U.S. Air Force pilot James McGaha and author Joe Nickell.
Wait a second.
What?
Does this guy know Frederick?
Not personally.
So how does he, like...
This is just like from records and descriptions given of him. And I think it's kind of like conjecture based on circumstantial evidence.
So it's about as factual as...
No, I mean like some of these things are factual. Like he was an inexperienced pilot. He only had 150 total hours of flying time.
Yeah.
And he had a class 4 instrument rating, which meant that he could operate the aircraft at night, but only in visual meteorological conditions. So like there's limitations to how and when he could take an aircraft out at night.
Yeah.
He had been twice rejected by the Royal Australian Air Force due to inadequate education, and he'd failed a number of exam subjects in his studies.
But failing a subject is not a practical assessment.
It's not a practical assessment, but it's an indication, and it actually happened.
Yeah, well, that would explain why he didn't let King Island know that he was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd been involved in 3 separate incidents as well while flying. So in one of the incidents for which he'd received a warning, he had strayed into restricted airspace. He wasn't supposed to be there. And in the other 2 incidents, he'd received a warning for deliberately flying blindly into a cloud, for which he was threatened with prosecution. So it paints a picture that he was like not a great pilot.
Well, maybe he's just a learning.
And he's inexperienced.
He's a beginner pilot.
And also lastly, and this is more of a personal thing, he was enthralled with UFOs. He often watched films, and he'd accumulated a number of articles on the topic. And he had said to family and friends that he was afraid that in the future he might come under attack by an extraterrestrial craft.
But lots of people are into UFOs.
Yeah, and then like I also feel like if you're like a pilot or something, like that could be a real thing. Like there's a lot of these types of reports. You don't know what's going to happen to you in the sky.
Even the Air Force see things in the sky that they can't explain.
Yeah. I mean, those declassified videos that the Pentagon released, like, what are those? Future videos. Anyway. So they believed that the inexperienced Frederick was deceived by the illusion of a tilted horizon, and when he attempted to correct it, he overcompensated for his position, and he inadvertently put the aircraft into a downward graveyard spiral, and he initially mistook that for the orbiting of his aircraft. And then they also said that the G-force that's created by the tightening spiral would have decreased fuel flow, which would have resulted in the rough idling that he described. Okay. Final theory is I don't know if it's the most popular one, but the final theory is the UFO one. So the final theory is that in some way, a UFO contributed to what happened. And
when we say UFO, are we saying alien space spacecraft, or are you saying an unidentified?
I'm saying an unidentified flying object, but it could be anything, right?
Yeah,
So,
but like you're not saying that there's an alien spacecraft that is, you're not thinking it's that, are you?
we don't know. It's an unidentified flying object. So, I mean, there's people in the camp that believe that it is piloted by extraterrestrials, aliens. There's also people that could say that, well, it could just be an unidentified flying aircraft, which could be military or whatever it is. But we know that there was nothing else on the radar with Fred. So...
Okay, so there's nothing on the radar.
There's nothing on the radar, apart from his own plane.
And we know that the lights were above and below him.
Yes.
And he was flying at an altitude that would pick up radar.
Yes, because he was on the radar.
So, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so in 1978, for 2 months prior to the 21st of October, there were numerous sightings of lights in the sky and cigar-shaped objects that were seen from King Island, South Australia, through the coast of Western Australia and New South Wales. So there were like a whole heap of UFO sightings during that time.
That night?
2 months leading up to that night. And then on the night of his disappearance, there were hundreds of UFO sightings from Geelong, Frankston, Cape Otway, and Brighton, where people described a bright object that was brilliantly lit, oblong in shape, and moving quickly. And then also from that night,
what shape's an oblong?
An oblong is like a long oval.
Why did you say long oval?
It's like a Twinkie.
Like a Twinkie. What's a Twinkie?
Okay, anyway, moving on. So then on the same night, there was a woman in Queenscliff who was reported saying that she, quote, saw what appeared to be a Ferris wheel spinning in the sky, and that was less than 2 hours after Frederick's plane disappeared. And 3 other witnesses came forward stating that they had seen an airplane descending at a steep angle with a much larger object with green lights flying just above it.
Whoa.
3 separate people came forward and said that they saw that.
With green lights?
With green lights, which is what Frederick described in the transcript, like in the exchange.
Mm-hmm.
In another strange coincidence, Mr. Roby, the air traffic control guy, he was working at air traffic control 5 days later, and another light aircraft pilot radioed him during a navigational flight above East Sale and reported that he had been passed 3 times by an intensely bright light traveling at jet speed, and it actually forced him to land. So this was 5 days later, and it happened to Mr. Roby again.
Again?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, so the third theory is that it was an unidentified flying object that in some way contributed to his abduction or demise or, what have you.
That last one really is quite convincing that there was something in the sky.
I mean, it seems like a lot of people saw something.
Yeah, but what was it?
Dun, dun, dun. Well, I don't know. I'm telling you the theories.
Okay, but nothing showed up on the radar.
Well, having looked at a lot of research, it doesn't seem like Mr. Roby could actually see anything else on the radar around Frederick at that time.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. There was some unidentified flying object in the sky that night that, caused him to become disoriented and maybe drove him into making a mistake or whatever it was. And I think he probably crashed in Bass Strait.
Yeah, it kind of supported, if he is a fairly beginner pilot, and he's flying by himself, over
first time over water at night,
yeah.
it's a bad combination.
And then something out of the ordinary flies past him and spooks him, and his plane starts to act funny, and then he loses control. I think it's a bit of a combination of all three, really. It's saying he saw something, he lost control, which maybe put him into a spiral, which made him go down quickly, and then he went down steep.
In 1998, his family erected a memorial plaque in Cape Otway, which was unveiled by Steve Roby, the air traffic controller who last spoke with Frederick that fateful night. Just 3 hours outside of Melbourne, you can still visit the site from which he made his last radio contact with humankind before he vanished without a trace.